My next guest is Yvett Merino, the Academy Award-winning producer of Disney's Encanto again, and the first Latina to receive the Oscar for Animated Feature. Yvette joined Walt Disney Animation Studios more than 25 years ago and has worked on animated features like Big Hero 6, Moana, and Tangled, just to name a few. Welcome, Yvette, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Encanto's been a huge success. I think I read somewhere it's approaching something like 2 billion minutes of streaming, of active streaming. That is, I can't even imagine what 2 billion minutes means. Why do you think it was this story? Why do you think people gravitate so much toward this story?
Well, I think, we've all asked that question of ourselves too, because it hit in such a big way. But, I think, a lot of times people feel seen in the film, and they feel like, and not only visually seen, because this is the first time Disney Animation has put a Latino family up in front and center. So there's that aspect, but also, the film really talks about the difficulty and complexities of living in a family and a multi-generational family, and how, things from the past can really kind of have an impact generations later. And so I think, people are seeing themselves, they see their family members in it. And so, from what I've heard from a lot of my friends, it sparked a lot of conversations within the families. And so I think that was probably a part of it. And then, I would be amiss to not mention the music is amazing. So I think that's a big part too.
It is amazing. So one thing that's very impressive is it does have that global reach. It touches people of all cultures. But I know Colombians that have seen this movie, and they're just taken with the fact that it's authentic. How did you make sure that that cultural authenticity would be there? Like, did you just have a lot of Colombian consultants on board?
Well, yes. And it was one of those things, we do heavy research at Disney Animation. And so very early on, our directors, Byron Howard and Jared Bush, along with Lin-Manuel Miranda and his father, Luis, they all went down to Colombia kind of to do that initial research. And then part of our process here is once we have, we've grown our show a little bit and we have our leaders on the show, the ones who are leading all the various artistic departments, we take another trip down there so all of them can experience that. Unfortunately, we had that trip planned for the end of March of 2020, and so we couldn't go. And so in that moment, I knew we had to shift and figure out a way to bring Colombia into our show. And really, we had been working with various people from Colombia, experts from Colombia, but it's been one of the most inspiring things was really how the entire crew embraced it and took on that responsibility of making sure that we had all the details right. And so we had, for our Colombian Cultural Trust that we formed, we had filmmakers who were born and raised in Colombia. They live here now, but they were born and raised. And so they were really our key. Juan Rendon and Natalie Osma were our key consultants that really saw every piece of our work. But we had botanists and we had anthropologists and architects and really everyone who they worked with our artists as they were creating and building this world, and then also worked with our directors and writers to make sure that we got all the details right.
How do you think your background as a Latina and in understanding multiculturalism as we sort of automatically all do as Latinos in this country, how did that play into your role in this movie?
Well, I think, me being a Latina growing up here, all of my grandparents, my mother was born in Mexico, but all of my grandparents were born in Mexico, and really kind of living in a, traditional Latino family where you have, your cousins and your family and your abuela and everyone is so close. It was an active part of our discussion in the story room and how we would talk about it and talk about experiences. I grew up in a household with 3 sisters. And so really when we were talking about the relationship between Isabela and Mirabel, we were talking about, sometimes we love each other, but there's that conflict. And that all comes from, my experience of being Latina, growing up in a Latino family, and really being that voice, not the only voice. We had many voices in the room, but being that voice in the room and sharing my experience.
So I understand you started as a temp at Walt Disney Animation Studios. How did you make it from temp to the Oscar stage?
I don't know. No, it was a lot of hard work. I started off as a temp, not really knowing what I wanted to do with my, as a job, as a career. Both of my parents, their dream was to send their girls to college. They didn't go to college. And so, they worked hard and they, taught me. I think I get a lot of my work ethic from my parents and how hard they work, but they really my instructions for life was go to college and get a good job. And so it was a lot of figuring things out along the way. And so when I started here at Disney Animation, I thought maybe I would stay for about 5 years to kind of see where it took me. And I just fell in love with the culture and the people here and the art that we do. And so after about 10 years, I worked in technology a little bit. And then after about 10 years, I had the opportunity to move into production. And within 6 months of kind of working, directly on the films, I had the realization of like, oh, this is really what I want to do. And so it was the first time, I was in my 30s and, in mid 30s. And the first time I was kind of like, oh, I could actually make a living doing this and enjoy it and love my job. And so, I started kind of watching and figuring out what the path is to being a producer. And it was a lot of learning on my part. It was a lot of obviously learning the role of production and understanding all of that, but it was learning who I am, how to speak up for myself, because I didn't know how to do that when I started here at Disney, and really starting to speak up on what I wanted. And once I, kind of found my voice is when things really started moving for me.
So my colleague Lex Juarez is gonna ask you a question as well.
Sure.
Hi, Yvette. This movie has spanned so many, like you said, cultures. People are, across the world have fallen in love. And I think because we talked about earlier, and when you had that other interview that we just showed, that showing that the families can look, not everybody's looks the same always. And with us Latinas, I mean, in the summertime I get really tan, and in the wintertime I'm really pale, and people don't always know maybe if you're Latina or Hispanic. And, for you, Yvette, being able to put together this movie to see how it impacted people to feel, that representation, and to see that representation, and that it mattered to so many people, that it really, stuck to them. How does that make you feel, and you and the other people on your team, who I'm sure you guys have had multiple, discussions about this?
Yeah, it's humbling, and it is really one of the reasons why I fought so hard to actually work on this film. I knew, it was a film that I wish I would have had as a little girl, because I didn't always see people who look like my family or look like me on TV. And so once I was able to, kind of officially working on the project, I was thrilled. And we talked a lot about the diversity that happens within a family. And, it's not only Latino families, but it is so vast. And it was important that we represented people that looked differently and showed people, I have first cousins who are Latinas, but they have red hair and blue eyes. And it's just, but nobody questions that in our family, because we're all, we just all grew up as family. And so, it was so important for us to make sure that people felt seen, by the characters, making sure that we included the Colombians in the film, because it is a big part of Colombia and the family that make the people that make up Colombia. Colombia is such a beautiful country that has such great diversity in, their biodiversity, their music, their people. And so we wanted to make sure and worked really hard to try to show as much as we could.
So Yvett, one last question. What can we do, or what can Latinas do to make sure that success like yours, productions like these that talk to young Latinas and Latinos also, that we build upon that success and the community keeps getting jobs like yours?
I think it's one of the biggest things that I think is we need to use our voice and find our voice and find out what you want and say it and speak it. And, we all have, I know, for us, I was raised to grow up and follow the rules and work hard, and you keep your head down and work hard and good things will happen. And it doesn't really work that way in the corporate world and entertainment. It's really, you have to work hard and you have to be able to stand behind your work, but you also have to be able to speak up and say, what you want and what you feel, kind of share your experience. We're in an amazing time in the sense that, I know, especially in entertainment, people are curious and opening the doors and wanting, to bring more diverse stories. So this is our opportunity to really use our voices and share our experiences, because those are experiences and stories that have been left out of the room for so long. So find out, find out what you want to do and go for it, but really say it and speak it and share your stories, because they're important.
It's excellent. Yvett Merino, producer at Walt Disney Animation Studios, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.